In a modest, sunlit house nestled in a peaceful neighborhood, the smell of fresh coffee mingles with the sound of birds chirping outside the window. The house is simple but filled with warmth, reflecting the life of Catherine, a 64-year-old mother, who has spent her years caring for her only son, Gabriel. The walls hold memories of love, sacrifice, and silent resilience. Catherine is a woman of quiet strength, with silver hair tied in a loose bun, her hands showing the wear of time and dedication. Every morning, she helps Gabriel prepare for the day. At 35, Gabriel has lived with paralysis from the waist down for more than 2 decades, ever since a tragic accident at the age of 12. His eyes, however, remain full of hope, a stark contrast to the stillness of his body. Despite his condition, Gabriel finds joy in the little things, like the soap operas he watches each evening with his mother. There is a calmness in their life, a routine they have perfected over the years, but beneath the surface lies an unspoken tension, the shadow of Gabriel's condition, the memory of the accident, and the quiet hopes and fears that Catherine carries every day. Though they rarely speak of it, both mother and son feel the weight of the past, bound by love, loss, and the unbreakable bond they share. The peaceful rhythm of Catherine and Gabriel's life is shaped by a moment that changed everything, a rainy afternoon more than 2 decades ago. Gabriel was just 12 years old, an active, energetic boy who loved soccer and idolized his father, Henry. On that fateful day, they were returning home from one of Gabriel's soccer practices. The rain was heavy, blurring the road ahead. Henry, with his usual calmness, reassured Gabriel that they would be home soon. But fate had other plans. As they drove down a slippery curve, another car, out of control, swerved into their path. Henry tried to avoid it, but the car crashed into them. The impact was devastating. When Gabriel woke up in the hospital, he learned that his father hadn't survived the accident. Gabriel, though strapped into his seatbelt, had suffered severe spinal injuries, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. The loss of Henry shattered Catherine, but she had no time to grieve for herself. Gabriel needed her more than ever. Abandoning any dreams she once held for herself, Catherine dedicated her life to her son's care. She became his constant companion, his nurse, and his source of strength. Together, they mourned Henry, but they never truly spoke of the pain that lingered beneath the surface. Though their bond grew stronger, the memory of the accident cast a long shadow over their lives. Catherine, despite her unshakable love for Gabriel, often wondered how different life could have been if that day had never happened. She carried this silent burden, but her focus remained on Gabriel, on making sure that he lived a life filled with as much joy and comfort as possible, despite the tragedy that had forever altered their world. One quiet evening, as usual, Catherine and Gabriel sat together in the living room, the soft glow of the television illuminating their faces. It was a typical night. They were engrossed in one of Gabriel's favorite soap operas. The familiar voices of the actors filled the room, and everything seemed as calm and uneventful as ever. But as Catherine glanced at Gabriel, something caught her eye, something she hadn't noticed before. She could have sworn she saw a slight twitch in Gabriel's feet. For a brief moment, her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly dismissed it. It must have been her imagination or perhaps just a reflex. After all, Gabriel hadn't moved his legs in over 20 years. Still, the image lingered in her mind. She tried to focus on the TV, but her attention kept drifting back to her son. Over the next few nights, the strange movement happened again. Each time, it was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Her mind raced between conflicting emotions. Could it be possible? Could Gabriel be regaining some movement after all these years? The idea filled her with a cautious hope, but also a creeping fear. What if it was just wishful thinking? Catherine didn't know what to do. She found herself watching Gabriel more closely, scrutinizing every small gesture. The tension within her began to grow. The hope that Gabriel might be recovering was almost too much to bear, yet the fear of being wrong loomed even larger. She couldn't bring herself to ask Gabriel directly, not yet. Instead, she kept her suspicions to herself, unsure if this was the beginning of a miracle or just her heart playing cruel tricks on her. Unable to ignore the nagging feeling any longer, Catherine made a decision that filled her with both guilt and determination. She secretly installed small cameras around the house. She justified it to herself as a precaution, a way to monitor Gabriel when she wasn't around, but deep down, she knew it was because she needed answers. The thought of invading Gabriel's privacy weighed heavily on her, but her fear of false hope gnawed at her more. Days passed, and Catherine found herself anxiously checking the footage. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Gabriel's routine remained the same, his movements limited to the upper half of his body. But one night, while reviewing the recordings, Catherine saw it, clear as day. Gabriel, when he thought no one was watching, was trying to move his legs. The sight sent a shock through her, and her heart raced. He wasn't just twitching or spasming, he was actively struggling, fighting to lift his legs. Catherine watched in awe as Gabriel, his face tense with concentration, strained to move his lower body. Though the movements were minimal, the effort behind them was undeniable. Gabriel had been keeping this secret from her, trying in private to stand, to move, to reclaim what he had lost. The discovery left Catherine overwhelmed with emotion, a rush of hope, confusion, and concern all at once. Her mind raced with questions. Why hadn't Gabriel told her? Was he afraid of disappointing her? What did this mean for his future? She wanted to run to him, to embrace him, to tell him how proud she was, but something held her back. Gabriel's quiet struggle had been his own, a battle fought in silence. Catherine, filled with love and fear, realized she needed to confront him, but how? One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Catherine could no longer hold back the weight of what she had discovered. The soap opera played in the background, but her thoughts were elsewhere, consumed by the image of Gabriel secretly struggling to move. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding, and turned to face her son. "Gabriel," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to ask you something." Gabriel's eyes shifted from the TV to his mother, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it, Mom?" he asked, his voice gentle but cautious. "I've noticed something," Catherine continued, trying to keep her emotions steady. "I've seen you trying to move your legs." The room fell into a heavy silence. Gabriel's face went pale, his hands clenched in his lap. For a moment, Gabriel didn't speak, panic flickering in his eyes. He looked away, ashamed, as if he had been caught in a lie. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he took a deep breath and spoke. "I didn't want to tell you, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been regaining some feeling for a while now, just a little. The doctors weren't sure if it meant anything, and I didn't want to give you false hope." Tears welled up in Catherine's eyes as Gabriel continued, his words spilling out with a mix of relief and fear. "I've been going to physiotherapy in secret," he admitted. "It started with small sensations, just tingles, but then I started feeling more, trying to move when I was alone. I didn't want to tell you because, what if it's temporary? What if it doesn't last?" His voice cracked with the weight of his emotions. Catherine's heart ached as she listened to her son, understanding the fear that had kept him silent. She reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "Oh, Gabriel," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, "you don't have to carry this alone. I'm your mother. We face everything together, no matter what." Gabriel's eyes filled with tears as well. "I was afraid to disappoint you," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "I didn't want to give you hope and then take it away." Catherine shook her head, her grip on his hand firm and reassuring. "You could never disappoint me. Whether you walk again or not, you are everything to me, Gabriel. But if there's even the smallest chance, we'll face it together." They shared a long, tearful embrace, the weight of the secret finally lifted. In that moment, they made an unspoken promise: no more hiding, no more fear. Whatever the future held, they would face it side by side, as they always had. With the secret now out in the open, Gabriel and Catherine faced this new chapter of their lives together, filled with a cautious but powerful hope. The next day, they both attended Gabriel's physiotherapy session, where they met his therapist, Sophia, a kind and compassionate woman who had been quietly helping Gabriel in his journey toward recovery. She had been Gabriel's confidant in this struggle, but now, with Catherine's support, they formed a united front. Sophia explained the situation more clearly to Catherine. Gabriel had been responding to the physiotherapy better than anyone expected. His nerves were slowly beginning to reconnect, allowing him to regain some sensation and control in his legs. Though the path ahead was uncertain, there was a real chance for improvement. Gabriel's sessions became more intense, focusing on rebuilding the strength in his legs. Catherine attended every one, watching as Gabriel pushed himself harder than ever. His once simple movements, a twitch of the toes, a slight bend of the knee, soon grew into more deliberate actions. Catherine's heart swelled with pride as she saw the determination in her son's eyes, his face set in quiet concentration as he strained against the limits of his body. Weeks turned into months, and the progress became undeniable. Gabriel, with the help of Sophia, was now able to move his legs more fluidly. Then came the moment that changed everything, his first attempt to stand. Supported on either side by Catherine and Sophia, Gabriel gripped the bars of the parallel bars in the therapy room. His arms trembled, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Slowly, he pushed down with his arms, his legs responding as they hadn't in over 20 years. He lifted himself off the wheelchair, shaky and unsteady, but standing. For the first time since the accident, Gabriel was on his feet. Catherine gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as tears of joy streamed down her face. Gabriel, still shaking from the effort, looked at his mother, his eyes filled with emotion. "I'm standing, Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief and triumph. Catherine, overcome with emotion, could barely speak. "You are," she whispered back, her voice thick with tears. "You're standing." With each passing session, Gabriel grew stronger. Soon, he was taking small steps with the aid of crutches, each step a victory that felt almost impossible months earlier. And then, in a climactic moment that Catherine would forever cherish, Gabriel, supported by Sophia, took his first steps on his own. The therapy room was filled with stunned silence, then erupted in cheers. Gabriel's face lit up with pure, unrestrained joy, his body shaking from the effort but full of triumph. Catherine, standing just a few feet away, could barely hold back her tears. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but to see it unfold before her eyes felt like witnessing a miracle. For Gabriel, it was the culmination of years of struggle, pain, and hope. He had defied the odds, and in those steps, he reclaimed a part of himself that had been lost for so long. As Gabriel's recovery progressed, so did his bond with Sophia, his physiotherapist. What began as a professional relationship, built on trust and encouragement, slowly evolved into something deeper. During their sessions, they spent hours together, talking, laughing, and sharing stories about their lives. Sophia admired Gabriel's resilience, not just in his physical recovery, but in the way he carried himself with grace despite all he had been through. Gabriel, in turn, was drawn to Sophia's kindness, her patience, and the quiet strength she displayed as she guided him through the most challenging moments of his life. It wasn't long before Gabriel started to notice the fluttering feelings he had around her. He found himself looking forward to therapy sessions, not just for the progress he was making, but for the time he got to spend with Sophia. Every smile she gave him, every word of encouragement, felt like a gentle push towards something more than just physical healing. But Gabriel hesitated. Sophia was his therapist, and he didn't want to complicate things. More than that, he was unsure if she could ever feel the same way about him. He had spent years feeling trapped by his condition, and the idea of someone loving him for who he was, not out of pity, seemed almost impossible. One afternoon, after an especially successful session where Gabriel had taken several independent steps, he and Sophia sat on a bench outside the clinic, enjoying the crisp breeze. There was a comfortable silence between them, both of them feeling the weight of Gabriel's progress. Gabriel glanced at Sophia, his heart racing, and before he could stop himself, he spoke. "Sophia," he began, his voice hesitant, "I don't know how to say this, but I think I've developed feelings for you. I know it might be wrong, given everything, but I just wanted to be honest." Sophia looked at him, her expression unreadable at first, and Gabriel's heart sank. Had he ruined everything? But then, she smiled, a soft, warm smile that sent a wave of relief washing over him. "Gabriel," she said gently, "I've known for a while. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something for you, too." Gabriel's heart leaped in his chest as she continued. "But we have to be careful. You've been through so much, and I don't want to jeopardize your progress, or my role in your recovery. But that doesn't mean my feelings aren't real." They sat in silence for a moment, both understanding the delicate situation they were in. Gabriel nodded, knowing she was right. "I understand," he said. "We'll take things slow, and I won't let it distract me from my recovery." From that day forward, their relationship shifted into something deeper. There were small moments between them, stolen glances, quiet smiles, and gentle touches, that spoke volumes about the feelings they both harbored. Though they decided to keep their relationship private, the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Eventually, Catherine noticed the change in Gabriel's mood, the lightness in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. One evening, while helping Gabriel with his exercises at home, she asked, "Gabriel, is there something you want to tell me?" Her voice was gentle, knowing. Gabriel hesitated, then smiled. "Mom, I think I'm in love with Sophia." Catherine's eyes filled with happy tears. She had suspected as much, but hearing it from Gabriel made her heart swell with joy. "Oh, Gabriel," she said, embracing him, "I'm so happy for you. You deserve love, after everything you've been through. And Sophia, she's a wonderful person." With Catherine's full support, Gabriel felt more confident in his relationship with Sophia. Together, they continued his journey toward recovery, but now with a new sense of hope and happiness that extended beyond the physical progress he was making. Sophia wasn't just helping him walk again, she was helping him rediscover the parts of himself he thought he had lost, including his capacity to love and be loved. Months of hard work and determination had brought Gabriel to the brink of a breakthrough. He was on the verge of walking again, unaided. The day had finally come. The air was thick with anticipation as Gabriel prepared for this defining moment. He stood in the rehabilitation center, his hands gripping the parallel bars for balance, Sophia by his side, her presence a quiet but powerful reminder of all he had achieved. Catherine stood just a few steps away, her heart racing as she watched Gabriel steady himself. The room was silent, everyone holding their breath as he released his grip on the bars. For the first time in over 2 decades, Gabriel took a step. It was small and shaky, but it was his own. And then another. And another. Tears filled Catherine's eyes as she watched her son do what had once seemed impossible. Each step Gabriel took was a victory, not just over his paralysis, but over the years of pain, struggle, and fear that had defined their lives since the accident. It was as if time slowed down, each movement a triumph of willpower, love, and the relentless pursuit of hope. Gabriel's legs trembled, but his face glowed with determination. With each step, his confidence grew. Sophia, standing just behind him, was ready to catch him if needed, but Gabriel pressed forward on his own. For the first time, he felt like his own man again, free from the chair that had confined him for so long. He reached the end of the room, where Catherine stood waiting with open arms. Overcome with emotion, she rushed to him, pulling him into a tearful embrace. "You did it," she whispered, her voice shaking with pride and disbelief. "You really did it." Gabriel's eyes brimmed with tears, his voice barely a whisper. "We did it, Mom." But the moment didn't end there. Days later, Gabriel returned to the place that had once been the center of his world, the soccer field he had played on as a child. The green expanse stretched out before him, unchanged, but to Gabriel, it felt like a different universe, a symbol of the life he had lost, and now, a life he was reclaiming. Sophia was there, along with Catherine, watching from the sidelines. Gabriel took a deep breath and stepped onto the field, his heart pounding in his chest. The feeling of grass beneath his feet felt like a promise, one that life was ready to give him a second chance. With slow but steady steps, Gabriel walked toward the center of the field. The wind brushed against his face, and for the first time in over 20 years, he felt truly alive. As he reached the middle of the field, Gabriel turned to face Sophia and Catherine. His gaze met Sophia's, and in that moment, he realized that his recovery was not just physical, it was emotional, too. Sophia had been there with him every step of the way, not just as his therapist, but as something more. Her belief in him had pushed him beyond what he thought possible, and now, there was no turning back. With a nervous smile, Gabriel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise, and Catherine gasped, realizing what was happening. Gabriel, standing tall on his own 2 feet, opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "Sophia," he began, his voice steady despite the overwhelming emotion of the moment, "you've been with me through the hardest journey of my life. You've helped me find my strength again. I've fallen in love with you, and I can't imagine my future without you. Will you marry me?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she took a step forward, her hand trembling as she reached for his. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Gabriel. 1,000 times, yes." Catherine, watching from a few feet away, felt a wave of pure joy wash over her. After all the pain, after all the years of sacrifice, she was witnessing a moment she had never thought possible, her son standing, strong and whole, proposing to the woman he loved. The 3 of them embraced, tears of joy mixing with laughter as they stood on the field together, a family bound not just by blood, but by the shared strength that had carried them through so many dark days. Gabriel, having defied the odds, had not only regained his ability to walk, he had found love, hope, and a future he once thought was lost. The miracle of his recovery was not just in the steps he took but in the life he was building, a life filled with love, purpose, and the endless possibility of what was still to come. Gabriel and Sophia's wedding was a simple, intimate affair, but it felt monumental in the hearts of everyone who attended. Surrounded by close friends and family, they exchanged vows in a small chapel filled with sunlight and hope. The ceremony was a celebration, not just of their love, but of the incredible journey that had brought them together. Catherine stood proudly at Gabriel's side, her eyes shining with tears as she watched her son begin this new chapter of his life. For Gabriel, the wedding symbolized more than just his love for Sophia, it was a moment of triumph, a testament to how far he had come. As he stood at the altar, without crutches or a wheelchair, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. His life, once defined by the limitations of his body, was now filled with possibilities. He glanced at Sophia, the woman who had not only helped him walk again but had helped him rediscover his heart. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to the home that Gabriel and Sophia had recently purchased, a charming house with a spacious garden, perfect for the life they dreamed of building together. The laughter of family and friends filled the air, and Catherine couldn't help but feel that everything had come full circle. Her sacrifices, her unwavering devotion to Gabriel over the years, had led to this moment of pure joy. But the happiness didn't stop there. A few months after the wedding, Sophia and Gabriel received news that filled their lives with even more excitement. They were expecting their first child. The news brought a sense of completeness to Gabriel's life that he had never imagined possible. He and Sophia decided to name their baby Noah, in honor of the doctor who had been instrumental in Gabriel's recovery, a symbol of the hope and healing that had carried them through. Catherine was overjoyed at the thought of becoming a grandmother. She threw herself into the role with the same love and dedication she had shown as a mother. As the months passed, she helped Gabriel and Sophia prepare for the baby's arrival, filling the nursery with toys, clothes, and handmade blankets. It was a labor of love, and each stitch she sewed into the blankets was a reflection of the care and devotion she had given to Gabriel all his life. When Noah was born, the house was filled with a new kind of happiness, a quiet, peaceful joy that felt like the culmination of everything they had endured. Holding her grandson for the first time, Catherine felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. Gabriel, cradling his newborn son in his arms, looked at Sophia and then at his mother, his heart full. "This is everything I dreamed of," Gabriel said softly, his voice filled with awe. "And more." Catherine smiled through her tears. "You've given me more than I ever dreamed possible," she replied, her voice filled with love. As the years passed, the family grew closer than ever. Gabriel and Sophia raised Noah in a home filled with laughter and love, and Catherine remained a constant, beloved presence in their lives. She relished every moment of being a grandmother, watching as Gabriel and Sophia built the life she had always hoped for him, a life full of joy, strength, and the love of a family. The house that Gabriel and Sophia had made their own became a gathering place for family and friends, a home filled with the warmth of shared meals, laughter, and the quiet moments that make up the fabric of a happy life. And through it all, Catherine was there, watching with pride as the family she had worked so hard to support flourished in ways she had once only dared to imagine. As she watched Gabriel play with Noah in the garden one sunny afternoon, Catherine reflected on the journey they had all taken. The years of struggle and sacrifice had been long, but they had led to this, a life filled with love, gratitude, and peace. Gabriel had not only walked again, he had found his place in the world, surrounded by those who loved him. In the end, it wasn't just Gabriel's recovery that mattered, it was the strength of the family they had built together. And as Catherine watched her son and grandson laughing in the sunlight, she knew that all her sacrifices, all the years of quiet strength and devotion, had been worth it. Her heart, full of love and contentment, finally found its place in the happiness of the life they now shared. This was the life she had fought for, the life they had all earned through their perseverance and love. And in that moment, Catherine knew that everything, every hardship, every tear, had led to this beautiful, fulfilled life. Years passed, and the house where Gabriel and Sophia lived with their son, Noah, became a sanctuary of love, laughter, and warmth. Catherine, now a proud grandmother, sat on the porch, watching as Noah ran through the garden, his laughter echoing through the air. Gabriel, standing tall and steady, chased after his son, his legs strong and sure. It was a sight that Catherine never took for granted, a miracle she had witnessed unfold after years of heartache and hope. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Catherine reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the tragic accident that had taken away so much, to the quiet years of caregiving, to the unbelievable recovery that had restored not just Gabriel's mobility but his spirit as well. It had all been a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the refusal to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Gabriel, now a husband, father, and thriving in his career as a motivational speaker, had found his purpose. He often spoke to audiences about overcoming adversity, about the strength it took to rise again after life knocks you down. He shared his story with humility, never forgetting the sacrifices his mother had made or the unwavering support of Sophia. His message wasn't just about physical recovery, it was about the emotional and spiritual healing that came with believing in yourself and the people who stand beside you. Catherine smiled as she watched Gabriel lift Noah onto his shoulders, his once fragile legs now strong enough to carry the weight of his son. It was a full-circle moment, a symbol of all the years she had carried Gabriel, both physically and emotionally, now reflected in the strength he had built on his own. Sophia joined them on the porch, sitting next to Catherine with a contented sigh. "He's come so far," she said softly, her eyes following Gabriel and Noah as they played. "And none of this would have been possible without you, Catherine." Catherine shook her head gently, humility etched into every line of her face. "He's the one who did the work," she replied, though her heart swelled with pride. "All I did was love him, and I'll keep doing that until my last breath." Sophia smiled. "Sometimes, love is the hardest and most important work of all." As the evening deepened, the family gathered for dinner inside, the house filled with the warmth of shared meals, laughter, and the closeness that can only come from enduring hardship together. After dinner, as Noah drifted off to sleep in his grandmother's arms, Catherine found herself thinking back to the life she had lived. Her journey had been one of sacrifice, but also of immense joy. She had given up much for Gabriel, but in return, she had gained more than she ever thought possible. The family, united and strong, had overcome the seemingly impossible. Gabriel, no longer the broken boy she had once cradled in her arms after the accident, was now a man, capable, loving, and full of purpose. He had found his place in the world, and that gave Catherine peace. In the quiet of the evening, after the house had settled into stillness, Catherine sat by the window, watching the stars flicker in the night sky. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her sacrifices had paved the way for this moment of peace and happiness. Gabriel had not only walked again, he had built a life filled with love, meaning, and a future full of promise. And through it all, Catherine had been there, a steady and guiding presence, watching with pride as her son flourished. In that final reflection, Catherine realized that her life's work had been complete. The love she had poured into Gabriel's life, the strength she had drawn on when things seemed darkest, had all led to this, a family united, a future bright, and a son who had not only overcome his paralysis but had found a way to soar. With a contented heart, Catherine whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every tear, every moment of doubt. She had given everything she had, and in return, she had gained more than she ever dreamed. As she closed her eyes, drifting into the peaceful embrace of sleep, Catherine knew that her story, and Gabriel's, was not one of tragedy, but of triumph. And in the quiet of the night, she smiled, knowing that they had all, finally, found their way home.